They shall all be yours, with the aid of my children. Do you accept?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Don't forget, we need to be able to control the people.
But we need to control the dragons more.
The wheels of revolution are turning, and bloodshed is sure to follow.
I come from a land where everybody calls themselves a king. Einar will soon be next.
I do love you, Galen. But I don't know if I could ever love you as my husband.
A child that burns is no Targaryen.
But he was your son!
I was better off back at the wall.
Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
I'm ready.
Okay, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is the one and only, the real Manos, Justin Cristelli.
Howdy, folks.
Howdy. So we are continuing our fan film reviews. This isn't quite a fan film, it's a fan animation. And this is based on the world of Game of Thrones. Now, I'm a fan of the television show Game of Thrones. I don't read the books, Song of Ice and Fire, though. Manos, I assume you've never seen anything from either, right?
What's Game of Thrones?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So this should be an interesting review. And I knew that. I knew that Manos had not watched the show or anything going in. And I was curious to see what his read would be on this, because from the title, I had a pretty good sense of what this would be, and I was right. And the thing I find interesting about it is, technically speaking, you don't need to know anything about the show, because every character that's in this is never in the show. Like, one character is mentioned by name because he wrote a book, and that's it. It's pretty much like a completely original concept set in the world for like little prequel fan explanation thing. So the only context I gave Manos was Game of Thrones, the show and the books and stuff, takes place on the fictional continent of Westeros, hundreds of years after the events of this, and this takes place on the continent of Valyria, which the way to think of it is Westeros is like Great Britain during the Middle Ages, and Valyria is like Rome during the height of the Empire. So that was the context I gave you, Manos. What was your impression of the fan film?
I was impressed of how ambitious this was. They really did sincerely try to do a animated prequel, and it's very obvious to me, like, how much loving attention that was put into this, and a real severe attempt to like fill in some backstory into the universe, and as well as the style of the film. But I'll be straight with you. I was rather bored by this.
Okay. Well, like, okay, so the thing I find interesting about you saying you're bored is I know you. You don't like fictional politics and stuff that much, do you?
No. I'm not against it, but every attempt I've seen of it is kind of puts me to sleep. Like, the famous scenes in the prequels of Star Wars. And all this.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, that's fair. Because, like, I mean, to be fair, what it is then is it's matching the tone of the show quite well, because Game of Thrones as a show is very much more about, like, medieval feudal society politics, where like, oh, this person's loyal to this house and stuff. Like, the dragons and the war shit, that doesn't come up until, like, season 4. So it's a slow burn.
Oh man, I'm sorry. It's like, they're obviously doing a great job because it has such like a huge fandom and it's such a success, and it's been HBO's #1 show for a while. But oh boy, season 4 is when you bring in the dragons. That's a rough ride for me.
Not quite. I'm being a little disingenuous, but
okay. Well, still, I mean, good lord.
Like, let me say this.
It's like, okay, you got these guys in like armor and capes and the swords and the cool ass dragons, and then they essentially do medieval zoning.
Yes, exactly that. Precisely that. It's kind of amazing.
I believe Gonthor has the floor. You have 3 minutes, Gonthor. I want to read to you.
Yeah. Well, like, the thing I've always said is you could watch the first season of Game of Thrones, and if you miss about the first 5 minutes of episode 1, you won't realize it's a fantasy show until about the last 3 minutes of the final episode of season 1.
Oh boy.
It is a slow burn for the fantasy, and a lot of that has to do with the idea that magic has been dead in this world for a long time, and it's just coming back at the beginning of that season. But this is like when magic was at the height of the world and stuff, and this fan animation opens with like a dragon devil god thing speaking through the flame of a sheep to the like nobodies of old Valyria and telling them, I offer you power by giving you command of the dragons, because I will give you the blood of a dragon. I'm like, holy shit, that's really cool. Yeah, I really like that.
That was my favorite part. That was badass. I really enjoyed that opening. Because I was like, okay, this is probably going to be pretty fucking cool. Like 2 minutes in, this is great.
Yeah, and then it turned into like the politics of wedding stuff, and I was like, oh, Manos is gonna like this.
Theseus, read the accounts and times from the last meeting.
Yeah. No, so it's totally fair. Like at that point, it's totally a taste thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I fully admit that.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to talk about. I was curious what your read would be on it, given that I didn't know anything about what it would be in particular, but I knew from the title and the Game of Thrones unofficial prequel thing, I knew the story they were going to tell, because the whole premise of Game of Thrones is that some guys called the Targaryens came to Westeros, brought dragons there for the first time, and conquered the whole continent. And it's like, well, why'd they leave their home? And the reason's always been that it's like it was destroyed in a volcanic eruption or some shit. And so, Rome, Pompeii, right? So there's a lot to that, a lot you could play with in those ideas, particularly with the way magic tends to work in the Game of Thrones universe. So I thought it was really cool premise to go with, and ultimately I was pretty happy with what they did here. I'm not sure how much of this is based off of the details given in the books, because they've gone into the histories of these fictional countries quite a bit in the books, and how much of this is original fan creation, filling in the holes kind of thing. But regardless, I quite like it. It feels really natural. It feels like it would fit in the universe. I was reading the description in here, and this took them about 2 years to make, and primarily what they want to do is this is a pitch to HBO. Wow. They want, and this is something HBO has considered, because Game of Thrones takes such long breaks between seasons, particularly because Martin's not done writing the books yet. HBO takes long breaks between seasons, and the idea of doing a prequel series that shows like the Targaryens' initial conquest of Westeros was something that had come up. So like this is a very viable idea, like just on the surface of it, and their execution of it I thought was fairly well done. There's a few things here where I'm like, that's too much, but overall I was pretty happy with this.
I was pretty impressed with like the pacing. There's some camera angles, like when the guy who looks like Green Arrow shows up into that room to have that long meeting. He steps into it, and then the point of view shot goes up to the ceiling. He enters, and I was pretty impressed with that. It just didn't remain with static shots. It actually took chances.
Yeah, which is like really hard to do with this type of animation. It's clearly not like crystal clear, the kind of thing you'd see broadcast on television. It is very much web animation. It reminds me a lot of like early 2000s Flash animation in a lot of ways. I think a little bit of it's done in 3D just because of how the characters move from time to time, but I can't tell you too much about it just by eyeballing it.
The animation essentially reminded me of what you see a lot on Adult Swim, actually. And it's a little weird seeing that type of animation done seriously. Because, like, every time I see a cartoon that looks like this, a walking, talking milkshake walks in, or Archer does something. And, no, this is actually still serious. And it's it's kind of a cool use of it.
No, I completely agree. It's a really good... if they are trying to do a proof of concept here, it's a really effective way to do it, because... just, goddamn, the shot of all the dragons flying in under the archway in the beginning's really cool. It's that idea of, like, the fantasy kingdom, like, on a grand scale kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff I can really get into. Yeah. Because, so much of fantasy that turns me off comes from, like, it's either really, like, low level, so you got like the hobbits and the Shire and all that stuff, or it's like the end of it, or like an exception, like the evil king that's far away and it's the journey to that. Whereas the idea of just like, it's still gonna be like the same kind of political show as Game of Thrones. It's just the threat hanging over our heads is, if we don't keep conquering, what are we gonna do with all the dragons? Like, shit, that's a really good point. Like, the guys are quote-unquote masters of the dragons, but they're, like, living things that can fuck shit up. They could destroy the whole fucking kingdom, and if they get, like, too unwieldy. It's a really, really good point. It's really cool to see that idea played with, and I don't know, it's not something I think I would have thought of. So I really like a lot of the concepts they're playing with here. Now, you might not know a ton about Game of Thrones, but like the idea of incestuous relationships is kind of
I've heard of that.
Yeah, seeped out into the popular culture. How did you feel about the way they were talking about and dealing with incest here?
I don't know. It's no more shocking than what I've seen before in other works, and to be honest, it's there are things I've heard about the show, so I don't know, none of this kind of stuff really kind of surprised me. There is a scene midway through where a couple of characters are talking, and there's like two people banging, like kind of a little blurred out in the background or something like that. And, it's funny, I was watching this with Lindsay, and her expression for that was pretty priceless. Like, she did one of those things where, like, she was kind of paying attention and then kind of like,
whoa,
but quietly, like, concentrated focus. Like, what? Am I seeing that?
Well, I mean, that's pretty out of the show too. Brothels. Especially early seasons of Game of Thrones had a lot more of that. It's interesting the way in which they're discussing incest, because as a fan of the show, like the idea that the Targaryen line was constantly inbreeding and that caused a lot of problems for them.
Yeah.
Like that's a really interesting character thing. And then this trying to take that on as like this is the first big time that it's ever happened in that kingdom, and it's like super controversial. I'm like, that's a really interesting take to go with.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I like a lot of the ideas this is throwing out, and it doesn't seem like they'll do a second episode because this did take 2 years. It doesn't seem like they'll do a second episode unless this is picked up by HBO. So that disappoints me, because as much as I like this, I don't know. It's gonna be a stretch. Even if best case scenario this were to be picked up, that's at least like 3 to 4 years away.
Yeah.
So like the fact that they're not committing to it as a fan enterprise for the long haul is a bit disappointing, but totally understandable.
I think HBO, if they did pick this up, I don't think the animation would look like this.
Well, I mean, I imagine it'd probably just go live action.
Well, either live action or, I just don't see them going with this animation style, because I've seen a lot of like pitch pilots for shows that would go on, and sometimes the animation is quite different. So yeah, if HBO put some money into this and some focus into this, I don't know if they go all the way to like, do they do? I don't even know right now if they're doing cell animation at all on TV, or the combination between that and CG or something like that. But yeah, they would definitely put more money into it.
Oh yeah, certainly. And I mean, Game of Thrones has had just as like bonus materials on the DVDs. They've had stuff that's like kind of parallax style animation added to just kind of rough out the lore, and they even had the actors from the show voice over those things, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
But I don't know. To me, I imagine that if this did get picked up by HBO, they would either go live action with it, or probably a much higher quality animation, maybe something similar to like what Netflix's Castlevania is doing, or something just its own unique style.
Yeah, or the Voltron. I've actually been watching Netflix build an interesting grouping of shows right now. I think they're still kind of figuring out their style, the Netflix style of animated shows, and I think they're getting there. And I think
it can't be any worse than Kong, King of the Apes.
Oh, I know, no kidding. Well, they've obviously, I've noticed a few failures, and I feel like Voltron is kind of important, because it's been a success. It's a very clear, cool style, and it's not a show. I don't know if I'd see that show on network. Even, I mean, maybe Cartoon Network.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting because American animation, like for adults, has always been a really trippy area, and HBO used to try to be more innovative with that. Like I remember they did animated Spawn movies in the late 90s.
Yeah, it was a TV. It was a series. It was 2 seasons, I think.
Yeah.
I did not care for that show, but I know it has a following.
Well, just I mean, like the quality of animation and the idea of doing more adult-oriented animation stuff in the U.S. is still a hot button issue, but that's neither here nor there, and it's not really focused on this.
I am constantly disappointed that HBO has not really. I don't know. They've never really focused on animation, and they could. And the way, they've been very innovative in the way that they kind of encourage filmmakers and showrunners to really create, some pretty, fascinating shows over the last couple decades. And none of that love has been given to animation. And they could change things. And it just bugs me that, I don't know, they just don't. They're just, it's not it's not an interest for them.
Yeah, and I mean, like this, it could be a cool idea to take a property that they had a lot of success with, like Game of Thrones, and do a prequel like this, and do it in animation. That could be really cool. So, again, this, as a pitch, this has a lot of legs. I'm more disappointed as someone who likes fan projects that they only wanted to do this one episode as a pitch. They didn't want to do a series as a pitch. And that's something I've noticed with, like, a lot of fan projects will start off with a, like, pilot episode for a series. I was looking into a Dragon Ball Z... Actually, I guess I'd call it a Dragon Ball GT fan project, since it took place in that continuity after the events of the series. Like, it was a single episode, and it probably took him a good, like, I think he said 8 years to make. Ooh. And it's like just got a cliffhanger. I'm like, and he clearly wants to do a series out of it and stuff. I'm like, that's great, but you just don't have the turnover for that. And I'm certain that you can get popular and stuff, but two fan projects that want to do longer term series, instead of a pilot, make a standalone that leaves room for a series. Get your standalone popular enough so you can gain a following and do a series, especially when we're talking animated projects and stuff like that. It's just that I understand the investment of time that goes into animation, and so the way to do it to me is, instead of leaving people lingering on the idea of a series, do a standalone, and then people will ask for a series, as opposed to hoping that your pilot for a series gets popular enough for you to be able to invest the time into doing more episodes than that.
Yeah, I mean, even with a budget in a studio, it can take up to 9 months to do an episode. And that's with a network backing you.
Yeah.
Not unless you're Matt Stone and Trey Parker, then it's like, oh, hey, the episode's supposed to premiere tonight. We better, like, make it.
Yeah. So, I don't know. That's just a thing that I tend to think about with a lot of these fan animated projects. Like, I really like talking about them because it's just, you know, it's a different kind of thing. Animation in fan projects allows you to do things you couldn't do necessarily, or not as well necessarily, in live action. I mean, this is a good example. The shot, even though this animation quality isn't stellar, the shot of all the dragon riders going under the gate to Valyria is really fucking cool and jaw-dropping. And on a live-action fan film budget, I doubt it. I doubt you could pull that off. Like, not nearly as stunning a way. I'm gonna have to be a lot more forgiving on a shot like that, I feel. And I'm not to say it can't be done. If you want to invest the time into, you know, modeling your dragons and modeling people on the thing, like, it can be done, but it's a lot more investment than the animation process is. So I really like the format of animation for fan projects. I just feel like a lot of people get into the idea of doing just these long series things, and yeah, this being a pitch for a series, it's more acceptable. But as far as fan series or fan projects in animation go, I'd like to see more stuff that's meant to stand alone.
It was exciting to watch a fan animated film, because, you know, we've talked about this in the past. I'd like to do more fan animation, but so many of them, you know, because of restraints, are usually like a couple of minutes, if that. Sometimes seconds.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to see something fully fleshed out here.
Yeah, I got my eye on a couple different things. We will probably end up talking about this Dragon Ball GT one I mentioned, because it's a half-hour episode. And then, like, there's a couple Godzilla projects I got my eye on that look pretty promising, so one day. It's just going to be, you know, 3 years from now, whatever. I'll go through, like, 3 more co-hosts on this show, and then, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said for the formatting thing, and I think it's telling about the quality of this project from a storytelling point of view, that we are so invested in talking about things surrounding it as opposed to talking about the story itself. Because you mentioned that you're not super invested in it, which is totally fair based on taste alone.
Yeah.
I certainly am, but I don't have a ton to say about it because I don't want to bore people with details about fictional medieval era politics. But it's definitely really, really interesting. And I don't know, like, of all the stuff in the story that I liked about this, I really like the idea of the origin of Valyria and the dragon riders kind of thing. I thought that was really, really cool. The way they played that off. And yeah, and it was such an effective cut to the dragon being born in the volcano to Valyria 5,000 years later.
Yes.
That was so perfect. I really like that. And then it got into medieval politics. I'm like, yep, there we go.
Like,
I'm sorry?
and they're still on. Oh, I remember watching that cut, the 5,000 years, and I was thinking, like, geez, just 5,000 years and you still got wooden boats?
You know, it's weird to think about that when we talk about time and stuff, but you know what the longest reigning empire in human history was?
No.
Egypt, for 3,000 years.
Wow.
Next is China, which was 1,000 years, and 2,000 years, and that ended in 1900. Yeah. Like, there's obviously internal civil war disputes within those empires as they were reigning, but yeah, they were
As will happen.
A single continuity of a state for thousands of years is really crazy when you
That's
think
kind
about
of
it.
mind-blowing when you think of it.
Well, okay. I love this little factoid, so I'm going to say this
Yes.
and we'll move on.
Sure.
Cleopatra, very famous Egyptian, right?
Yes.
Okay, Cleopatra was born closer, historically speaking, to the moon landing than she was to the construction of the pyramids. Right?
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Oh
so
my
when you think
God.
about, like, time like that, the idea of an empire being born and lasting 5,000 years, and again, that's what's so cool about this premise, the destruction of that empire, and like, it not just being a natural disaster of the entire fucking world blowing up underneath their feet, but to have it also be from crumbling within because of the way they treat people within their society. Like, you know, you see the beggar on the street and he just gets taken into the ministry, and then the context of that is given to you in the earlier scene when they're all talking about all the horrible things they're doing to people with, like, under their control. And he's like, you're breaking the backs of these slaves, and like, well, you're no better, you're experimenting on people in the name of science. And it's like, yeah, that guy just got, like, abducted into that system. So, like, stuff like that kind of going on in the background, I really like those ideas. I think that's a really, really fascinating kind of thing to play with, and it fits the Game of Thrones mold super well. So yeah, what else can we talk about with this one, Manos?
Blah. I
You got nothing?
don't know. I kind of got nothing.
That's fair.
This is kind of it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. Like, I would be interested to see this guy do a prequel to, I don't know, something I like or has some kind of like understanding of. I just know that there's dragons, boobies, and if you have a wedding, it's not probably going to turn out well.
Yeah, 7-day wedding ceremony kind of thing. That was pretty cool. I will say one of my negatives on it, and it's a pretty small thing, is I felt like the inclusion of characters from Westeros to have, like, the guys coming over on the boat at the beginning and the guy who's in the council talking, I felt that was very out of place, because to go again with the historical example of Rome versus Great Britain, you know, at a certain point, the Romans stopped in Great Britain because they're like, okay, this place just fucking sucks. It's worthless. Let's not bother with it. And I kind of, like, I don't know if there's anything in canon to the books or the show that, like, has confirmed that attitude, but that's, like, what I've always thought the Valyrians thought of Westeros until their fucking home blew the hell up. I was like, oh, the fucking backwards barbarians of Westeros. They can't even build like a 70,000 foot castle like we can. Why would we ever bother with them? And then like the idea that's just, oh shit, now we need a home. Well, here's this land. They got gold and shit. Yeah, I'm gonna make it my kingdom, kind of thing. And so I don't know, stuff like that. I just thought I see the reason that they're included is to kind of give us context on how the society works, because they're essentially our eyes into it. But I don't know, it was just a little weird. I would have been fine with just the Meister character with the gray cloak and the chain, because he's kind of the connection that we need. But it's all right. It worked out. Okay, one other thing I wanted to talk about was just say I thought the music was really well done because it matched the tone of the show, so I don't know if they pulled it from the show or created their own score in the style of the show, but either way it worked really well.
That's what I was going to ask you, because it really did sound authentic, so I was wondering if they had just pulled, because you can get that score and the scores from the seasons, I believe, online pretty easily. I know that stuff's pretty available. So yeah, if they didn't create it from scratch, well, I mean, if they didn't grab it, and created it from scratch, it sounds very good.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like the tone. You've got like the underscoring drums, the da 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 da, like going real slow in the background at certain points.
Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones. Those are the lyrics.
Yep. Game of Thrones.
It's a Game of Thrones. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like they definitely did a good job of capturing it if it is original score. I never know what to make of that, because usually what people do, like we've had this where we've talked like, oh, this is a really good score, and then people are like, yeah, we just used the thing from the show, we just happen to credit like the actual composers and stuff instead of just saying from the soundtrack of. I'm like, oh, well, I feel silly now. So whatever they did, it worked. Put it that way. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to ratings. I'll go first. I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5 dragon eggs birthed in the heart of a volcano.
Okay, and I'm going to give this, I'd say, 3.5 blurry cowgirl positions. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's obviously source material is not something I follow or invested in, but I that a lot of effort and work have been put in there. So, if I was a fan of this, I'd, probably dig it a lot.
Yeah, totally. All right, Manos, what will we be talking about next time?
Okay, we're going to be talking about, it's Saturday Night in Gotham. Batgirl short film. It's a follow-up to the Friday Night in Gotham that we were talking about a few months ago.
Yay! Should be a good time. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Realist.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.